Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Haunted Vermont podcast. My name is Paul Doski, and joining us is a very special friend of mine from God knows how long now, probably more than 10 years, or maybe 9 years for that case. But anyway, you may know this man from the founding of a paranormal group known as the Paranormal Investigators of New England, or PINE for short, and this is none other than Jeff Stewart. Jeff, welcome aboard.
Thank you, man. Good to be here. Been forever.
It really has, man. Like, I've been getting the year confused, I think, with when you guys invited me to to investigate Hubbardton Battlefield. I want to say, I keep saying it's 2015. I think that was the last time I was actually in the field with you.
Yeah, I would say so. Maybe even a little before that. It had to be about 2015, 2014, somewhere around there. Your guess would be definitely better than mine because it's just with all the other things that that we've done. But yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, and
Battlefield was awesome.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know when I went with you, there wasn't really much going on, but I know you kind of found my old stuff, and I don't know if you remember offhand, but you were the one that basically was commenting or messaging me, basically saying like, am I the only one hearing this, or am I hearing like cannonballs and horses and stuff like that? I think that was you anyway. And I was like, where are you hearing this? And it's just like this video. And I think it was when we were in the cemetery, which is like right below the hill. And it's just like, that's interesting because if we were hearing it in the cemetery, or if you were hearing it while we were in the cemetery, then that's very weird because we couldn't really hear anything while we were up there at the field at the time. Right. You know? So. Right. So real quick, Jeff, just for those that may not know, who you are and who Pine really is, but like give us an idea of like who you are and what got you into the paranormal and what eventually made you want to form Pine.
Well, I guess I was just a creepy teenager. Maybe that's where I should start. My parents were older than I was when I was around that 13, 14 years of age, and they used to watch shows like Sightings and Unsolved Mysteries, and there were so many of them back then, at least in the 90s, that I just became a fan, and I wanted to know, is this stuff real? Like, because before I didn't really care. Like, people would tell me their house is haunted, and I'd laugh it off, but I really wanted to know, and my best friend at the time also was really big into it as well, and we're like, you know what? Go to our high school. We used to be able to, take out like a camcorder, micro recorder, or cassette recorder. Like I said, I'm showing my age here, I know. So we would take whatever equipment we can get, including our, still cameras, and we would go to these like supported or supposedly haunted locations that I would either read around Halloween in the newspaper or from a book that's about haunted Vermont. There's plenty of them. Although I'd suggest, take your pick and be cautious of every story because not every story is going to be true. As I found out through some authors that sometimes they have to fill the book, but, whatever, go by what they say. And we would go out and we would investigate the only way we knew how. And there was no ghost hunter shows on at that time. So we didn't really know what we were doing. We just kind of like developed our own thing. We watched, like I said, a bunch of Sightings episodes, and we'd watch like actual parapsychologists going around investigating haunted locations. And I'm like, so they're just recorded. They're not talking on it and trying to interview the ghost. They're just recording. So I would start doing stuff like that, and that's kind of what got me into it. Just something to do as teenagers, and plus wanting to investigate these alleged cases of ghosts and monsters and even UFOs. Like I said, started really, really early.
Yeah, that's fair enough. You're not really showing your age. I mean, if you're showing your age, then I must be showing my age then too. And I remember those like cassette tape players and everything else.
So it's crazy that we've gone so far that you could pretty much do everything on a cell phone now.
Yeah.
Where you have 5, 6 different pieces of equipment.
Yeah, well, I find it to have that piece of equipment is a little bit more better than the phone at times too, because the phone can't just record everything at well,
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
it can and then it can't.
yeah. I try to
Yeah,
tell people don't use it unless it's like, unless you're experiencing something, then pick up your phone and start recording. You know,
yeah,
uh, Capture that evidence so we can process it and move forward. That's what I usually tell everyone.
yeah,
But yeah, right, man. I all the equipment, and when I finally, like I said, I did that for a few years. I joined a local group. Finally, it was actually ran by a parapsychologist. We had kind of a falling out, so to speak. So I'm not going to mention the organization, but um, I was with them for a while, and I think it was right around, what did I say, 2004. I think I started my own organization. This is like when things were getting up there. Like we were starting to get more and more cases and calls because the launching of Ghost Hunters on TV. When they launched, it was huge. We went from investigating maybe a couple of cases a year to a couple of cases a month. It was almost like a full-time job at one point, which is obviously not a good thing, especially when you're married, because the wife doesn't want you out all the time investigating. But as the investigator, you want to get your teeth into that investigation. So,
yes,
but
and
anyway,
then as I may say real quick, Jeff, too,
yeah.
with touching on the fact that you said full time. People also got to realize too that if you are trying to do a being full time investigator, most of the time you guys aren't getting paid. You're only getting donations, if I may say.
Yeah, yeah, it right, exactly. And we've gotten donations over the years, which is great, but it's never been a full time thing. I obviously that would have been a dream come true, because when I was younger, I always envisioned myself as, like I said, a paranormal investigator. And like I said, I eventually went to work after being with the police department as a private investigator, and I used to kind of fantasize what it would be like if we actually had clients that would hire us to do some of that stuff, because then you can really dig into it. You could really investigate it properly, and you can do background, searching, history searching, genealogy, which is stuff that we do anyways, but you'd be paid for it instead of all those hours after work, researching online and going to local libraries, at least, back then before you could find everything on internet. Um, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I'd say that's when I started the organization. I know that was your other question. That was around 2004.
Yeah, and isn't it crazy that it's almost 20 years there, Jeff? 20 years?
Yeah, it's been a long time, man.
It,
It flew by.
it really does. I mean, like, yesterday since it was nice out and I got out of work and there wasn't really much going on here, so I took a trip to Chittenden and I went to the old cemetery
Oh
where
yeah.
where I captured the name Ralph back on my spirit box back on July 15th, 2012. And then um, I find that piece to be awesome at the time. But what made it more awesome is that a week after I got that response through the spirit box, we ended up finding a grave for Ralph. Like at that time when we actually went there to do the spirit box session, we just went there just for the spirit box session because
Hmm.
I'm not gonna lie, it was one of those moments where it was just like I have a new toy, I need to go play with it, and
Right.
so that's what I did with the spirit box. So after we got done with the spirit box, it was just like, okay, it seems like it's worked. We got a couple interesting responses that night, and we got a couple names, but the one that really stood out the most was Ralph. That was like the much more clearer response that we could get.
Oh, I
Um,
love those ones. Yeah. I love the
yeah,
ones that clear and understand what they're saying. Like I said, that's the thing that keeps me going. It's hard being in that balance of where I'm always skeptical. It's just my nature. It's just who I am. But when you start getting voices and you can't find any reason for them being there, or even like in some cases I've had where they almost answer your question when you're asking them, when you do the question and answer session, and you're like, how can that be misunderstood? How can that be fake? How can that be a radio or a CB? As another one, people used to tell me that CB used to interfere with the recording.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've never even heard of that. I could understand the radio or even the what do they call it? The no, wait, what? It's not auxiliary, like the new auxiliary cord. It's oh man, what did they used to call it? It was like a piece of, maybe it was like a piece of wire that was attached to like a cassette tape that you would put into your cassette tape player in your radio.
Auxiliary cord, yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Like 3.5 jack on it that you would plug in. Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah, so I could see those kind of coming into your own radio too, because sometimes I think people that remember it will obviously remember, like, you can sometimes drive by other cars and it's like whatever they're listening to is now playing on your radio for like 2 seconds and then it goes back to yours.
Right.
So I don't know, but yeah, I've never heard CD before, so that's interesting. But yeah, Jeff, real quick, so just to continue my story for a minute, so I went back yesterday, and I tried doing a spirit box session again. Honestly, no response came through, so I was just like, okay. But what was really catching my eye the most was my EMF meter. When I first got there, and I have proof of this, I did record it through my phone because idiot me forgot my SD card for my camcorder. So I was just like, well, crap. And then I remembered I had my phone, so I was just like, oh, well, this is going to have to do. So anyway, I took out my phone, started recording, and I showed the EMF. The EMF is, at the time when I started, was still showing like 0.0. And it was showing like a good 77 degrees or something like that. So it was nice, But then as I started to start talking around Ralphie's grave, that's when the spikes started to happen. And it was very weird. And the spikes were going everywhere, Jeff. Like, at first it started at 0.2. And then at one point I got 1.5 or 6. And then at one point it jumped all the way to 2.9 and then down. Jeez. And then right
like you're standing under a transformer, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah. And then right before I left, Jeff, I'm still trying to figure out how I can debunk this. So maybe with your experience in the field, maybe you could help me with this one. But when I put the device onto the grass, because I just wanted to put it down for a minute, and all of a sudden that EMF set off a 4.6. So obviously I recognized that and said it so that way people acknowledged or saw that I acknowledged the 4.6. So what I did was I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to recreate this. So I picked it up and I put it back down, and this time it went from so when I put it back down again, it went to 0.4, and then it dropped down to 0.2. But I never saw like a 4.6 or anything higher when it was on the ground.
Interesting. Did you try following it, like moving around different areas to see if it's just steady in one particular area, or is this something that's trailing out?
If I had to guess, it would probably trailing out because it only lasted a couple seconds when I saw that number, and then it poof, like it was gone. While when I was talking, because they hit a number that I was looking for. I was like, hey, can you guys hit like 2.4 or even a 2.0 would be nice. But even when I started the video, I said, if you are here, could you at least give me like a 3.0? And I think
Mhm.
later on, when I got that 2.9, I think that's what they were trying to do. I think, or I'm saying that because it was literally 1 point away from being 3.0, and they
I see.
gave me 2.9, and then from there, it started to drop. Almost like, I think it was because I said, if you guys want to drop the number, step back away from the device, and it's going to drop the number. Because I was just trying to see maybe, maybe there was some sort of weird, I don't know, thing in the air that this EMF was catching. But it
Right.
went from 2.9 to 2.6 to 2.4, all the way down to
Mhm.
like 1.4 or something like that. I have it on the video, so it dropped down really quick though after that 2.9.
Yeah, that sounds like it's like, from what my understanding is, it's showing up and then it's dissipating. It's just going away. And obviously, like I said, when you get that read, you want to kind of like start moving your device around the EMF, whatever EMF style you have, to find out, like, is this thing moving? Is it just in one location? Is it higher below than it is high? And then you can, that's because I like to say I eliminated all the other possibilities, like, EMF coming from a transformer or a power line, or uh, maybe some weirdo that likes to test EMF blasters. So I would always like try to like set up kind of my own grid in the
Mm.
ground, and okay, where am I going here? Is it going up? Is it going down? I usually tell the group, hey, just start one place and work your way around. So instead of just sitting there and holding it, which is great because you're getting your response. I mean, if you have two EMFs, have one sitting there, catching these readings, and then have either someone else or yourself, if you're alone, take that EMF meter and just build a grid around that hot spot and see if it's moving anywhere. If it's, if you got like, almost picture like, if we want to say that entities can throw off EMF, let's say they can manipulate it, right? So that's kind of the theory that we like to go with. So you go with that theory and you say, okay, well, let me see what it's doing, and you're going left to right, right to left, and that's it. That's the only reading. So okay, well, you know, how many inches is that? You know, what I'm trying to
Hmm.
develop here. What I'm trying to say is you're basically trying to do an EMF ghost. Essentially, you're trying to like see if it's the size of a normal human. Like, is it that range? Um, because who knows exactly what causes it. I've never been one to speculate on it. I know it's something that's been tested and something that has been done and still done, my understanding, by parapsychologists, which I've always looked up to. Um, so that would be my recommendation, because I've done that in every location I've gone to. Obviously, there's been places that I found bad wiring, because they'd say, oh, I'd lay down in my bed and I get these bad thoughts and my head would start to ache and shake. And I'm like, okay, well, they thought maybe it was a ghost trying to possess them or a demon trying to possess them. And it turns out that, no, you got a really bad wiring in the back of your, head. Move your bed, you'll be fine. So, that's one way to investigate. Obviously, the other way is you're in the middle of a field like you were, and I know where you're talking about. I've been there myself, and there's no transformer around there. There's no
Exactly.
power lines there. There's nothing there. It's just an old school, 100, 200-year-old cemetery that has no reason to have EMF spikes. None.
Exactly.
There's nothing that I can see there. I mean, maybe I don't know as much about EMF as I thought I did, but I've gotten readings there too. I can't tell you off the top of my head because I don't have my case files, but I want to say I've gotten some weird spikes in that location,
Yeah.
including recordings.
Yeah, I've gotten some interesting recordings myself. One is has always burned in my mind that it was one of the Eddie brothers responding to me or trying to correct me, if I may say.
Yeah.
So I'm going to touch on a little bit of what you were saying, Jeff, about moving around with the EMF. So that's exactly what I did. So I would not stand still. I was walking around. I moved left and right. Obviously I put it on the ground, like I stated, because that's where I got the 4.6 spike, which
Mm-hmm.
is right off the back. I was just like, why am I getting a 4.6 as soon as I put it on the ground, which is weird enough for me already. But anyway, so afterward, when it started to kind of go down a little bit with the EMF signals, if I may say, or spikes, however you want to word that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I did walk over to the Eddie's gravestone, and I will not bull crap any of this is that once I moved away from where I was from Ralphie's grave and I went over to the Eddie because I was like, okay, maybe I might get something over here with the Eddie brothers. And
Right.
that
Famous
EMF,
list fight.
yes. And the EMF dropped from like 1.4, it dropped all the way to 0.5, and it stayed there like that for a little bit. And then when I went up to Horatio's grave a little bit, it bumped to like 1 point, so it became 0.6. But nothing major came from that. But as soon as I went back over to Ralph's, that's where it started to give me like the 2.9 and stuff like that. So at first it was only giving me like small numbers, and then when I
Mm-hmm.
went back, it's when they were giving me the bigger numbers.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Almost like
So
you were engaging.
yeah, and that's why I was trying to figure it out if that was maybe some sort of way of them responding to what I was asking. Because before I even pulled out my spirit box, I said, okay, I would like you guys, if this is you, Ralph, I would like you, and if you would like to say hi, I said, can you make this EMF say 1.5? If you do that, I will bring out my spirit box, and that way you can actually say hi to me again, like you did 10 years ago. It went
That's
to
cool.
like 1.5, 1.6, so I said, okay, okay. So I pulled it out, but never got a response. So I was just like, interesting. So I stopped the spirit box and I pulled out the EMF again, and I basically was just like, okay, I'm gonna be leaving soon and stuff like that. And at this time, I wasn't really getting any big numbers. I would get only getting like 0.2, I think it was 0.5 maybe. But that was when I set it down in the grass and got that big 4.6 right before I left. And that's when I would like pick it up or picking it back up to set it back down. And I probably did that two more times after I thought of 4.6. Because I picked it up, re-put it back down, and I was like, okay. So I re-picked it back up, and I put it down one more time just to like make sure.
Yeah.
And it went from like 0.4 to like 0.2, I think it was. But yeah,
Jeez.
it never jumped to a high number when I put it down in the grass.
Stayed steady. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
That is
exactly. Yeah. So I was just like, okay. So I don't know. I mean, uh, was it Ralph? I don't know. I mean, somebody must have been messing around with it to give me those numbers that I was asking, but who knows?
I would have loved to have done the Eddie's property when it was up for sale, but I don't think the real estate company would like that kind of kind of you know groups running around their place because that's where they did their spiritualism shows for the whoever would travel to their house. They would perform all that stuff. If nobody knows who the Eddie brothers are, you got to look them up. It's such a fascinating case of two spiritualists or psychics, and they would hold like seances and stuff like that in this house, and they even built their own little stage type thing inside their attic or whatever, and people would just come from all over New England just to see these guys.
Yeah,
Very fascinating story.
yeah, and then that's what basically engaged. Henry Occult to come over to try to
Yeah.
debunk. So we even have a book about what he experienced with the Yetis for what was it, a week? I think it was a week.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Yeah, he came from
Yeah.
New York City, I believe. He was he was a colonel in the army, and at this time he was acting, I think, like an independent investigator slash reporter who wanted to debunk them because they were just people couldn't understand what they were seeing. You know, they thought these entities that were showing up on the stage were them, but they couldn't figure out how they would go in the back, change their outfits, and come out and pretend to be whatever spirit they conjured up. So it sounds like it was a really hard case for even this guy that thought it was completely, BS. And then all of a sudden he's like, I have to trust what these guys are saying because almost like
Yeah.
my favorite Sherlock Holmes, statement or quote, once you have eliminated the probable, whatever remains must be the truth. I don't have the
Well,
exact quote in front of me, so I apologize, folks.
no, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Let's just say this real quick. So, if anybody is interested, go check out "People from the Other World" by Henry Occult, and there's all your answers in that book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So my only thing to that, Jeff, about the Eddie House is I actually know somebody who is part of the High Life Ski Lodge. So,
Really?
um, yeah. So, and I just found that out when I talked to him for the podcast because he's actually writing 3 books on the Eddie brothers.
Are
So
you serious? Wow.
I am, yeah,
I
and
can't believe you're still doing it. That's amazing.
yeah. So yeah, there is a slight possibility there, Jeff.
Yeah.
that
Okay.
would like
Yeah, I might have to come back for that.
exactly. But no, so I've actually been into the Eddie house twice, and
Really?
yeah, once was back in 2011, and me and a couple people were just bored one day. It was around Halloween, and we just wanted to go see what we
Cool.
could conjure up, I guess. So we just remembered the Eddie house there, and this older couple was there, and they were drinking wine, and they invited us in, and they were trying to get us to drink with them, and at the time we're just like, no, that's okay. Like, thank you though.
Right.
The
Thank
most
you.
nicest people I've ever met, though, I will say that.
That's
But they didn't
amazing.
care. They're like, hey, do you want to come in? And I'm like, um, you don't mind? And they're like, nah, we're only here. It's fine. And I think it's just
Amazing.
because they had a little bit too many drinks, and I think they
Yeah,
were just feeling
they
nice.
were they were feeling it, very comfortable.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, at this point, I kind of wish I could go back and drink with them because they were that nice. But yeah, we
Yeah.
went in, took some pictures. They were kind of, telling us a little bit of like the club and stuff. Uh, everything else. They even let us sign like the guest books, like the old-fashioned guest books. So they
Oh
have
yeah.
those. Yep. So my
Uh,
signature is forever in one of those. Same with
Cool.
like two of my other buddies are,
Just
and
one of the
then
places I never got to check out.
yeah, and then in 2013 when Haunted Vermont teamed up with Obscure Vermont with Chad there, uh, we got invited in again, and all I did was just I drove up to the lodge, and somebody was outside raking, and they came over and were just like, "Hey, can I help you?" kind of thing, and I'm like, "Well, honestly, we don't really want to disturb you guys too long, but these guys are from out of town. They know what this house is, and they just never seen it before. So we just figured we'd grab a couple pictures and we'd be on our way. No questions about it. That's all. And the guy just like, I think because of the fact that I said that they've never been here before and they're basically out of town, this guy
Hmm.
basically looked at them and looked at me and goes, "Well, how about I give you a tour?" And I'm like, seriously? so,
That's
so,
awesome.
so I went into the house again, and I loved it, man. Like everybody that I came in contact with was so nice. I've actually gotten messages about people banging on the damn place and being completely disrespectful to them.
Right. It's all how you
To
approach.
yeah, exactly. It's all about the approach, and all I was wanted to do was just show my friend and his folks the house real quick. Since they're out of town, wanted to snap a picture, and instead we just got a tour out of it, and without even trying, it was just more
That's
of like,
really cool.
yeah. And I would say, Jeff, if you ever get a chance, you definitely need to see the inside of it. It's really
Oh,
nice.
I would like to see that for sure, man. I'm drawing a blank on the location of this Victorian house that is still in the exact same condition as when the original owner built it. It's his furniture, it's his um, clocks, it's his paintings. I'll tell you the ghost story if I can remember it all. Um, his daughter died, and he was concerned, I believe, that she was going to come back alive, or like she's not exactly completely dead, like somehow she'll come back alive. And he wait a minute, no, that's the wrong story. Okay, let me try this again, guys. That I was going to say that is another story where this individual buries his daughter, and he has kind of like a way to look into the coffin to see if the individual is still alive or not. If they're moving, and they set it up to where air can get in. It was a really fascinating story, and that's the wrong one. I'm thinking of the guy that his wife died, and he ended up putting a phone inside of the crep. It's either the crep or it's the coffin.
Oh,
You see what I'm getting at? Yeah, I can't think of the name of the place. I want to
wow,
say
yeah.
Colbert, but I don't think it's Colbert. But this, so he ran a phone line, and this is like when phones were just coming out. Um, he ran the phone line from his house, and the only time that you can answer or pick up the phone and it'll dial on the other end is if you're in the coffin or you're in the crypt. I can't remember which one, and it went off a couple times. So
Crazy.
that got the husband worked up to the point that he would go down and find out what's going on, and obviously never came to that conclusion, but he was so rich that he put in his will that still, my understanding to this day, that place is exactly like it was over 100 years ago, which is like another thing. I love history, and I love, anything old. That's just, I'm an old soul in a somewhat younger body here. But I was so fascinated by that story. Like, the only way you can make that phone ring in the house is by picking it up. If you're it's either the crep or the mausoleum, or it's the coffin. I can't remember which one. And the fact that it went off a couple times, like, there's no reason for it. He was the only one living there besides his servants that are inside the house doing what they do. So
Wow.
if you remember that, let me know, because I've been itching to find out what's going on there. It's been a long time, but the point of my story is I went there as just an onlooker because I was so fascinated with the story. I checked out the cemetery, and I saw the mausoleum, and then I said, I'm just going to go over there because there was somebody working in the yard, and I told them who I was, what we do, and the person was like, "Oh my God, yeah, I saw one of your lectures, blah 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 blah." And next thing you know, we're jiving and talking, and I get this beautiful tour of this place, and it's like going back in time. There's nothing modern in there whatsoever, not even a phone. That
Wow.
phone is the only phone there is that one phone, and if
That's
it rings,
crazy.
then yeah, yeah, everything's the same. The bed, the linen, some of his clothes was still in the closet. I mean, it was just like as if he left, like he just walked out the door and you missed him. But we're talking 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s, I think, 1901, 1902, somewhere around there. But yeah,
Well, I got a story then for that one. because now you got me homework to do, like a Victorian house. And I swear to God, I've heard that story too. And
Yes, it was in a Joe Sitko book, so I don't have my
it's
book
not
on.
it's not the one in St. Albans, right? That Victorian inn
No,
there.
no, the back in time.
No,
No,
not
that's
that
one of
one.
my favorite places. No,
Uh,
this is I think in your neck of the woods. Now that I think about it,
around Rutland.
I want to say so. Yeah, around
Not
Rutland.
not the Bowman mansion, right?
Maybe it is the Bowman's mansion. That sounds very familiar. He has the cemetery right next door, right? Where
Right
his
across the
wife dies.
street.
Yes, that's it. Bowman. Thank you. I thought it was
Oh,
Colbert.
yeah. No. So
Oh,
that's Cuttingville. So
Cuttingville.
yeah. So I can add to
I
the
was
story too. So Jeff, so there's also a story about the Bowman mansion where in his will, as you were saying,
yeah,
the only thing I didn't hear you say is he wanted his servants or whoever that would take care of the house at the time, that
yeah,
even after he died, to keep setting up dinner plates for him and his family, so
yes,
that way they could come back home and eat.
yes. After being dead, yeah, yeah. They're gonna
Yup.
come back alive. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it.
and there was another story too. Now it brain farted me, but yeah, that's
I
basically
know there's so
why.
many of them.
Yeah, well, that's basically why he built the mausoleum across the street,
Yep,
so that way,
the
because he
phone.
believed, well, not just that, but he believed that let me rephrase this. He believed in reincarnation, so he also
Yeah,
believed that even after you died, you would still be able to I forget the exact wording, but he believed that you could rise up from your grave, walk across the
hmm
street, and basically go home. And that was
yes,
his idea. So yeah,
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 yeah.
you're totally talking
Bowman,
about Bowman's Mansion. Yeah.
Bowman. Yeah, yeah. That has always been one of my favorite places that just happened by accident. I mean, I tried getting them to let us investigate, and we were very close to doing it, but the rest of the committee that supervised the place wouldn't allow us to investigate. I even told them I'd give you references of places that have told even TV shows like Ghost Hunters and those guys. They told them flat out, no, 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 because we said we'll do it as a private investigation, and we don't reveal any private investigation. I've done so many of them that if I wrote a book, I think it'd be interesting, but I can't talk about it. I can't write about it. It's just stuff that we did. It was no different than what I did as a PI or as a bounty hunter, so
Hmm.
almost the same thing.
That's funny though too, because a friend of mine is going to be coming out of town again tomorrow, and then, I was going to show him a couple areas, and Bowman's Mansion was actually going to be one of the places
Yes,
I was going to
you
show him.
got
Yeah,
to hit that stuff.
exactly, exactly.
I hope you get in, man. I hope you do. Use your finesse. I know you can do it.
I'm gonna try. My goal is I'm gonna try to reach out to the historical society, which is literally across the street as well, right
Yeah,
next to the cemetery,
right.
because
So,
I'm wondering if they would know anybody that would allow me to even step foot in there, because I'm curious. Like I've seen the show. Have you ever seen? And this is for the listeners too, but for me right now, I'm mostly asking you, Jeff. Have you ever
yeah.
seen the show on Prime TV, Prime Video, or even I think it's PBS, New England Legends?
Is that the one with Jeff
Just
Lozano?
Bowanger, just Bowanger.
Langer, sorry. I'm thinking of the wrong Jeff. But
Yes, you are.
yeah, I've seen, I think I saw one of them or two of them, I think. Yeah,
He
I
has he has an
met,
episode of the Bowman Mansion.
he does?
Yep.
Ah, that, I'll have to write him and find out how the hell he got that.
Yeah, I'm actually
I
trying
know, yeah.
to. I'm actually. Oh, really? That's funny because I'm actually
Yeah,
trying to get hit. I'm trying to figure out a time and day that would work for him, so I could
I should
talk
say
to him on here.
Right, I was going to say, I should say I knew him back, when I was still in heavy investigative mode.
Investigating,
He
yeah.
would be somewhere where I would be doing a talk, and I'd be like one of the next speakers or whatever, or a warm-up speaker for, someone like him that's a celebrity, But,
yeah.
Plus I did something super funny that he helped me out with that, I'm very grateful that he did for me at, one of the conventions I was part of. One of the members of my organization actually read a lot of Jeff's books and saw his video, so she was kind of starstruck. And I said, "Well, just go over and say hi to him. He's a friendly guy. I've met him several times before. Really good guy." So I walk over, I'm like, "Hey, Jeff," and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, "Can you do me a favor? Can you come over and just say hi to her real quick?" Because she's like, she's blushing there. She's like afraid to come over because you're a celebrity to her. So, and he just walks right over and puts his hand on her and goes, "Hi." So yeah, I'm very grateful for him on that regards.
Yeah.
And that's case, but I didn't know he did the Bowman House. So did he actually do a tour?
Sort of. Like he was allowed inside, so he showed us a little bit of what was inside, and that was crazy. So I know exactly what you're talking about. It looks like it.
There.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Because I know they said they had to sell some things to keep some maintenance up, but they said other than that, it's really in still immaculate condition, like they left, like they just left. And that blew my mind. I've never seen a place like that. And it's one of those places, like if they would just open it up for people to tour, even if it's just a tour, it has nothing to do with the paranormal. Even if it's just a tour of an old building, it's something that you'd want to see, especially, considering 90% of our ghost stories, popular and famous ghost stories, are about individuals or entities that have passed on over 100 years ago. So it gives you that indicate what did things look like back then. So really cool.
Yeah,
place.
exactly. Yeah, no. Yeah, I'd totally recommend that episode. Right now, it's brain farting me on what number it is because I think he actually added like a new one recently, which was like Witches, I think it was called, where he went to Salem and did a thing about the Salem trials. But anyway, yeah, he totally did do one on Bowman Mansion. So, and Joe Citro was the speaker for that one.
Yeah, good old Joe.
Yep. Yeah, and so you must love the story then, Jeff, about Tiffany Clark Smith, the window with the grave.
Yes, yeah, sure do. That was one of the first cases that caught my imagination as a younger individual.
Oh, I can see why.
Yeah, that's creepy, man. You don't think that people did that back then?
No.
Like, who would have thought?
That's exactly what I was thinking too. I was like, who just thinks of that? Like, seriously, who just goes,
right,
I want furniture and I want a shovel and bell and and add a window so that way I can break the glass and start yelling for help. Like
right.
Wow.
Got to be able to break it. Yep. Yeah. That's one of my other favorites.
Yep. And I went there during the pandemic shutdown too, I believe. It was either that, yeah, during the pandemic shutdown, and that was my first time. Yeah, that was actually my first time visiting that, and that site is just so bizarre looking. It really is when you see it in person. Like the pictures just don't do it justice until you actually are there.
You gotta go.
Yeah. Now, speaking of like stories and stuff, Jeff. So what are some of your favorite stories, or even and that could be like whether it be in urban legend, folklore, or like maybe any type of investigation that you've done where you've had the story and you're like, okay, I need to check this out. Like
a few of them, man. They're like the Mothman story has always fascinated me. It's funny that I've never been down there to West Virginia,
Hmm.
but that's always been one of my favorite stories, because it's just the people that were involved with it, like they had no reason to make up this crap. I mean, maybe it was a giant bird and it, you know, and it freaked them out, but it's the story itself is amazing. For ghosts and hauntings, obviously the Bowman is definitely up there with, one of my favorites. The Emily Bridge case was always a good one. Um, Although I was never a big fan of the story as truth, because I've never been able to, all these years that people have heard this story, you know, nobody's really gotten anything concrete to say, see, this is what's going on. But nonetheless, it's still a fascinating story. I also like the Black Agnes story, the cemetery.
Oh, yep.
You lay there, you'll be dead within the next, few days or month or something like that.
And
Uh,
within the next week. Yep.
yeah, exactly. There's just so many cases from, like I said, from my UFO phenomenon investigations to my cryptozoology investigations. Like I said, I was a pretty big Bigfoot hunter there for a little bit. Shout out to my buddy Jason Lorfus. If you hear me, buddy, he wrote a book there not too long ago in regards to Bigfoots here there in Vermont. Him and I have done some investigations where there's no need for what looks to be a giant footprint in the middle of the woods, unless somebody was really good about walking in the middle of the woods without making a trail mark and then putting some footprints. So that's always been a good legend story. And as for ufology, I actually had a personal experience. It is the only, paranormal like experience that I really had. And that's when I was, again, with my best friend. We were just hanging out doing some homework in Winooski, Vermont, Winooski High School, hanging out on the bleachers, and all of a sudden we see these two big giant orb-like objects in the sky, like stuff that you can't make. There's no light source. There's nothing there. It's just like almost as if it's a giant frickin' frisbee, like people say. But it wasn't like a craft. It was just weird. It was just like energy. And these things are floating around us, and we're staring at it. And within a minute, they circle around each other and they take off like supersonic fast, going different directions. One was going left, one was going right. And him and I decided not to say anything to each other, so we wrote down our statement, like we're trained to do, and draw out some pictures, and we exchanged it, and we're like, oh my God, we did see it. We saw the same thing. It was real. It wasn't made up. I say ufology because it's an unidentified flying object or an unidentified aerial, phenomena. It could have been something else. Who knows what it was, but whatever it was enough to make me believe in that kind of avenue and that kind of stuff. And then the other real close and personal, is kind of a ghost story, I guess you could say, because I have no other explanation. Again, this is around the time that I was mostly just kind of a legend tripper more than a paranormal investigator, because I was a kid. I did some bad things and got kicked out of school for the day. So I went up to visit my father, who was a building manager of a mansion, a couple of mansions there that were like turned into high-rise like apartments or condos or whatever. These buildings were built in 1700s. One of the buildings actually belonged to the mayor, one of the first mayors of Burlington, Vermont. And there was actually kind of like a gangland shooting that happened there, apparently back in the 1920s or 30s. And the individual that died, I can't remember. I want to say his first name was Horatio something or the other, because when you say Horatio, of course I think of the other guys there, but this guy was just a lonely butler. I guess he got shot or something like that, and he ended up going into the service quarters, which there's still the same doors, same hallway where my dad's office is. The individual died there after he got shot from a gambling debt or something along those lines. And my dad kept teasing me and telling me that, Horatio's gonna, he's gonna get you, and keep it up. He'll show up, and he messes with things all the time. And of course, being the adolescent that I was like, nah, right. And I'm sitting there, so my dad leaves to go get McDonald's for us because it's around lunchtime. And I'm sitting at his desk, and all of a sudden I hear what sounds like dress shoes on the cement. These are cement floors because, like I said, they're original. That they're not something that was made many years later. So I hear footsteps, and it's coming towards my dad's office door. And I'm like, oh, I said, oh, maybe he's already back. So I jump up and I open the door, and nobody's there. So that is one of my favorite experiences and my favorite story, because unless you experience it yourself, you don't think anything of it. You just think, oh, well, maybe it was somebody else. No, this area, this section of the property doesn't have, apartments in it. And up above us is wood, all wood. I don't have an explanation for it. So when people tell you those things and they tell you those stories, like somebody was walking behind me and they gained up on me as if they were going to jump and attack me. And as soon as I turned around, they weren't there anymore. That's what it felt like to me.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Those are like true to life experiences that I'm like, I don't have an explanation for.
Yeah, I hear that. That's like, back when Ghost Hunter was on TV and stuff, I used to watch that a lot with friends and everything else. And then I never would have thought that I would have had my own experiences when I was like in fourth grade at my friend's house, where almost every time I went there, something was going to happen. Whether it being a locked door swinging open, random footsteps being heard coming up the stairs, or us getting moved around when we were sweeping, or as kids do when kids are young and stupid, they weave a mess in their room, and then we could leave, come back 2 hours later, and everything that was on the floor is now chucked in the closet. So
no,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah. So I'll that's always been my favorite stuff. And then like as we grew up older, that friend and I, his name is Justin, and for anybody that had listened to my previous episode when I discussed that story, yeah, like we kind of wish that we could go back in time and ask our parents for like a camcorder or something, just so we could capture it, all that stuff that was going on. Yeah, that was fun. Otherwise, I have a weird um, something in the sky. I guess I still can't figure out what I saw. I keep telling myself it's a drone, but for the technology that it was for back in 2009, 2010, I believe is when it happened. I keep thinking it's 2010, but it's when Vermont had the big storm. I want to say it was Irene, maybe, but it like completely like destroyed like everything and like killed people and stuff like that. But anyway, we were working in one of those towns where it got hit by that storm for like the flooding, and this thing is in the sky. And I say thing because it's almost looked like a black dot that was just sitting still in the sky. And I watched it for like a couple hours while I was doing my job, which was traffic control at the time. And I radioed my partner and I said, "Do you see that in the sky?" And he couldn't see it. And I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "There's this black dot in the sky, and you don't see it, no?" "Okay, well maybe when we get done, if it's still there, I'll try to point it out for you. If it's not there anymore, then well, I guess you didn't see it or whatever." So, I don't know. So a couple hours go by, I want to say at least 3 hours or so because we ended up having lunch and we came back out for a couple more hours to work. And that thing was still in the sky. And I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't really see any type of uh, propellers or like any type of indication that it was a drone. Um, the most craziest thing about the story, Jeff, is basically as soon as we got done and my partner was able to come over to me, as soon as I pointed to this black dot thing in the sky, that's when
Yep.
it moved. That's when
Yeah.
it moved.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
See, it's hard nowadays with all the technology that's going on. It's like, it's great. We got all this technology that we can use, but, with these, little devices and these helicopters that we can fly around in, drones and all that stuff, it's gotten a lot harder to investigate that stuff. But back then, yeah, I don't think they were that prominent. So that's interesting.
Yeah, from what
Especially way up high. They don't go that far.
Yeah, from what I could research back when I remembered this from a recent podcast episode that I listened to. But anyway, so I did some research, and supposedly for back in 2009, 2010 days, drones were only able to be up in the sky anywhere between a half hour to 2 hours, and this thing was there for I say 2.5 hours, if not more. You know,
Then
so I
see,
don't know.
that's cool. I mean, I've heard of so many different objects before. Like I said, before these drones started becoming where you can buy one at Walmart for $20.
Right.
Silver, from anything from silver balls like spears
Yep.
flying around to where people are like, "What is that?" Like as if someone just chucked a silver bowling ball or something in the sky, but it was flying.
Yeah.
I still never got to solve that mystery because I've investigated a few cases like that I just, what is it? I don't know. How do I know that's not some sort of alien craft, or,
Right.
I mean, or some sort of special military project. I don't know, I have no clue, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, and so I'll add to this a little bit. So what I just described, like a black dot that's in the sky. So this podcast that I listened to called like podcast UFO, I think it's called. Anyway, they did like a live stream thing where they had people call in or listeners call in and share their stories or whatever. So this guy calls in from Connecticut, and his story basically almost runs the same way as me. There is quite a few different though. Uh, his story was in 2014. However, same thing, like this weird black dot in the sky. However, his did not move like mine did. His vanished in the middle of just being stationary in the sky. His vanished.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, like quoting, like quoking. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like almost like it went into quoking mode. Yeah, and so that's what made me start to rethink of what I saw.
Yeah.
I was like,
I mean,
okay.
yeah. Yeah. It's just like, being a pilot in a helicopter. Do I want to go up, down, left, or right? Except for these guys have a cloaking device. It's fascinating. It really is. That's always been one of the things that I've always been really into as well, besides, ghost phenomenon and cryptozoology and occult. Not a lot of people know, but I did my own occult investigations. That's a little more detailed, a little more frightening for people to deal with. Some people can't deal with it. It's very intimidating, dealing with, some dark individuals trying to use magic, and occult, and using, deities and spells, and I actually investigated a coven of witches that weren't very nice. They weren't good ones.
Oh boy.
I'll just say that. I can't get into a lot of it, but it was very interesting. Very interesting case. It's one of my favorites that I was, asked to help out a local department. I'll say that. With that was really cool. That was really cool. Because usually I'm used to doing it as just a private person, doing it privately with, other people that are having issues like that.
Right.
Related to the occult, whether it's, someone's child that suddenly got into it for some reason. They watched an old video back when that thing was back in the 80s and early 90s. It was actually a huge thing, especially where I originally came from, which is Lawrence, Massachusetts. In that area, we had a lot of that Satan, demonic, and occult stuff that went on. And as an investigator, I've had quite a few experiences and cases in that realm, I'll say. And I've also done demonology. I've investigated a couple of demonology cases too. Saw some interesting stuff. I watched a guy who, either he did it or something did it, but he lifted up and back like he was being thrown. And it's something that I would almost laugh at because I'm like, oh, come on. But I actually saw it myself.
Wow.
Yeah. So I got to see some pretty cool stuff. Like I said, it's sad. I haven't been in the field in a while, like I was telling you. So it's like all this stuff is starting to come back in my head now because I've been just like putting out of mind because that case is done. So move on to the next one. But now I'm thinking back to all this stuff. Like, man, there are a lot of of cases I'd love to talk about that I just can't.
Yeah, and that's the sad thing. So just to go back for a minute, Jeff, because I've had a couple people, bring up the Lake Champlain UFO base thing. So what can you tell us about that? Because I know, like you were telling me to mention on one of the episodes that, like I did, Cobble Hill, I think it was, and somewhere in Milton.
Milton, Colchester borderline, yeah.
Yeah,
you have to get permission from the skydivers there that they actually own the mountain. I think it was a public or it was an open property at one point, but for some reason they now own it. They're very cool about it. They're totally like, hey, just we want to go take a hike up on Cobble Hill. They're totally cool with it. You just gotta ask them ahead of time because that place is quite the legend. So my reporting of that particular area and the reason why it's such a hot spot, I've had so many reports of sightings, and I'm not the only one. There were other investigators and UFO investigators as well that got the same report as I did. And someone in that ufology field believes that may be like a window area. Like, so instead of answering the question, how do they get from where they are to here, people believe, or some people believe, that there are window areas that they can get into and they can get here quick. And they believe that's a window area. Like 1 minute they're there and next minute they're gone. One of the reporters or people that witnesses, I should say, that saw the craft, it was a kid up there just, doing what he was not supposed to do with his other friends, smoking stuff they're not supposed to at that time. And I guess they were looking up, and all of a sudden they see half of a UFO of what they believe is like from the Independence Day movie. Like they said, you could look up and you can just see it, and it looks like it's going into a pocket of something because it's like disappearing in front of their eyes. So that's where I think someone surmised that's a UFO window area, and that's getting pretty close to Lake Champlain. I mean, what do you say to that? Especially a couple of kids, like, yeah, maybe they were high, but that they're not stupid.
Well,
Cobble Hill has a couple of things now that I think about it. So I got UFO reports from there. I've also had a ghost report from there, which was bizarre, because there I am investigating it as a UFO case, and now all of a sudden I got, like, there's a ghost there. There may be a body in the ground there somewhere, and he's trying to tell people to get him out or something like that. I can't remember the full details.
Is that Cobble Hill? Or
Cobble Hill. Yeah.
Where this ghost is, right?
Yeah, ghost and the UFO area.
Hmm.
So when we say UFO area, we're talking like up in the sky above that area. And supposedly, like I said...
In the cloud, basically, right? Like there's some sort of cover?
Yeah, it's like, I use Cobble Hill when I'm talking about the window area for the UFOs to come in and out, allegedly. I explain Cobble Hill because that's where most people say they were. They were hanging out there. They were, camping, or they were just, walking around, or they were cutting through the mountainside because there's houses somewhere in that area as well. And they would look up in the sky and they'd be like, "Oh my God, look, there's a UFO right there." Like, it just appeared and then it just disappeared. And like I said, I had it's one individual that told me the story. His friends didn't want anything to do with it. He didn't want his name mentioned as well. But so these 3 individuals were hanging up the top of Cobble Hill. And like I said, as they were hanging out doing their thing, they were looking up, and all of a sudden they see half of a UFO, as if, like I said, it was being swallowed up by a pocket. Like, so supposedly there's this window area up in the sky that these things can go in and out. Because people ask the question, how did they get there from here?
Right. And, that kind of falls into, like, there must be, like, a window then in the lake then if people, well, let's just say for this example that any lake, right, has a window. So that's why people from all over the world have said, I've seen UFOs diving into the water. Or should the real word be submersive, like they're submerging into the water?
Right. USOs, yeah. Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Right. Yeah, I've gotten those too. Yeah, I've had many people tell me they've experienced what looks like a craft going into the lake, and that reminds me of my favorite UFO story in relation to Vermont, that a priest and I think he was a manager of a well-respected bank back in 1908. Okay, so sit on that for a minute. 1908. 1908. No vehicles, nothing. Nobody's up in the sky flying around, and they saw what they can only describe as a cigar-shaped-ish object in the sky flying. They don't know what it was. It was there, and it was moving faster than any horse and carriage, is the way they described it. And that happened in Burlington, Vermont.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I don't know if it's on the internet. It's a story to read. Yeah, it's a good one. But yeah, it literally happened, 1908. And it was a story, I want to say that they told me it was in the paper, but I could be wrong. At that time, which is how they found out the story. I mean, 1908, a UFO sighting.
Right? No, I don't
say to that.
Right? Yeah, what do you say to that? And at that time, like you were saying, like, no cars, no nothing. So, yeah. So
yeah, they were still riding horses.
Yeah. And I don't think... Yeah, no, there couldn't have been any airplanes yet either, I don't think. No.
No. They did not show up until the 40s, I believe.
Or 30, 40?
Regular flying ones that can go up that high. I mean, you could have those, tether ones that can go up in the air, but they didn't even go that high. The way they described it, it was up there. It was like in space, is the way they described it. So it was really up there, but they could see it, and they were both standing there watching this object that had no wings. It was just like I said, a roundish, a cigar-like shape is all they can say that it was, but it had no wings, nothing.
Oh,
and
cigar-like
going
shape.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They have a specific word for that. It's not like a tic tac, but it's yeah,
yeah,
crap. I don't remember the technical wording now for the cigar shape, but yeah, that's exactly what usually people describe it. It's like a cigar
yeah.
shape ship, and everybody kind of looks at you funny, like that can't. That's like that's not possible. Like a cigar
But
shape.
yeah, you think about it, it's just like completely, big giant pill, whatever you want to call it, a tic tac, a cigar, up in the air with no wings, nothing. And this thing was, you know, again, 1908.
I'm
That
gonna have to
blows
look
my
this up
mind.
now. Yeah, I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
look this up now.
yeah, Burlington, Vermont, 1908 UFO. It's blew my mind. Blew
So
my mind.
I'm assuming in the Burlington Free Press might have posted it then. I
I
think.
wonder. I
Yeah,
wonder if it did.
I'm
That'd
gonna
be
have to
great.
look at the archive now on newspaper. I'm gonna have to figure that one out. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a good story. Yeah, who would have thought?
Exactly. Well, Jeff, I don't want to keep you anymore because we've only been talking for like an hour and a half, and with you, I feel like we've only just barely scratching the surface. But I
Yeah,
mean,
so many stories, man. Such a long time, long time.
yeah. Now, just real quick before you go,
Hmm.
uh, could you give us maybe? Hmm, it's probably going to be hard to only pick two. So let's just say four. What are, in your own opinion, of what you've either captured yourself or maybe one of
Hmm.
your fellow uh, paranormal members captured? What would you say is your top four favorite pieces of evidence that you have
Ooh.
captured throughout the years?
Um, yeah, it's a tough one because I had several EVPs that I couldn't debunk. And like I said, they were almost like direct responses. And of course, you don't know that until you review the audio sometime later, like days later. This happened at, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. It's in St. Albans. It's across from the Back in Time. It's like a rec center now, but I can't remember what the name of it was. But we were asking questions like, is there anyone there? Can you speak to me? What is your name? And like one of the questions, I don't know if I was just being a smart ass that night, but I'm like, do you know you're dead? And during my playback and listening, you hear very soft and faint, I'm still breathing. And I'm like I threw the frickin' headphones off my ears because of all the EVPs I've ever recorded, I've never heard one respond. Not like
Wow.
that.
Wow.
Like that. It was freaking creepy. And the story was a janitor apparently died in the girls' bathroom back in the 1920s when it was a school in St. Albans. So,
And it's
yeah. So
now a
that,
rec center?
yeah,
Is
it's
it
like a
the
rec
same place?
center,
Hmm.
something like that. That's my understanding. I'll have to remember the name of what it was called. They changed it, but you know, at the time it was a St. Albans school in the right above St. Albans Park and across from the. I don't know if she's still doing it or not, but the bed and breakfast Back in Time, which is
Yep, they're
also my
still
other
going
favorite.
strong.
Is it good? Good.
Yep, they're
Yeah,
still
good
going
for her.
strong.
Um, we investigated that place a lot, and that's the one place that I've had the most experience in.
Oh wow.
Again, laying in bed, it's not something I was able to catch on video, but it was something that we caught audio, and
Hmm.
it's something that I experienced, and that's a rocking chair going off by itself,
Oh
and then
wow.
stopping dead when I'm like, I turn and you can hear me say, "Well, if that's all you're going to do and not show yourself, don't bother." And I go
Oh
back to bed
gee.
because I'm a
Oh,
grumpy man. That's how grumpy
uh,
I am.
yeah.
That
Wow.
place had so many experiences, even with my investigators that didn't have experiences anywhere else that we've gone, and they're like, "Listen, I really saw someone out there." in the field, or I saw somebody up in the attic. And weren't you just up in the attic? I just heard like footsteps. Again, dress shoes. Dress shoes hit harder. And back when this individual that died there, they would always wear dress clothes because that was kind of the thing back then. Like, no, we're all down here. Like, well, I just heard somebody up there. Again, the creepy footsteps that come and go and disappear. So, yeah, it's really hard to pin. It's almost like asking me which child's my favorite, because it's there's no answer there because they both are. So there's a lot of evidence that we've collected over the years that, some of them were from private cases that, like I said, I couldn't tell you where it was, but I could say, like, I watched, like I said, a demonic case where a guy flew backwards a couple of feet. I can't explain that. Either he's a really good acrobat or actor, or something threw him.
Right.
And there's some other things in that realm that I've experienced, and I'm just like, that is really, like, as an investigator, you're like, that is cool, because that's what you're looking for.
Yep.
So
yeah. I mean, that's a good one. I mean, yeah, I figured that would be a little bit hard too, because there is so much evidence. And like one of my favorites that that I'm pretty sure I told you about, but just in case for some reason one of the listeners also hadn't heard, but so back when I did my own investigation at Hubbardton Battlefield, I did some research, obviously, and found out that before that piece of land where we are going to be standing or walking around per se was actually part of New York. So I kept that in my head. So when we went down to where the cemetery is at Hubbardton, we had a chance to break off. So that gave me my cue where I said, okay, I remember this. So now I'm going to try to figure out a way to ask it into a question and maybe see if I can get a response. So I sat down and then I basically said, hey, I'm lost. I'm trying to figure out what state I'm in. Do you know what state I'm in?
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
Very faintly, when I had to re-listen to, as you were saying, like a couple days after catching it, there was a very faint response to my question, and to me, it almost sounded like whoever was responding to me said New York.
That's awesome, and that lines up perfectly, because not many people realize that Vermont wasn't always there. It was New York and New Hampshire. The northern part was New York, where Hubbardton is, and then south was New Hampshire.
New Hampshire, yeah. It didn't actually become Vermont until sometime between 1780s, I think. 87?
Yeah, Ethan Allen is the one that pushed for that. Ethan Allen and the Mountain Boys, they pushed for that, and then obviously history from there. But yeah.
But I just find that so cool. Yeah, no, you don't. And one of the final things I'll say, Jeff, before I let you go too, is because I forget if I told you this one or not. So right before we called it quits for the night at Hubbardton, I was by myself again in the Hubbardton Battlefield field this time, and you've been there, so you know how big this field is.
Oh,
so I was in the middle of the field, Jeff, while everybody else was at the very top there, at the top of the hill range.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So anyway, I don't know why, but for some reason I just started asking different questions. And one of the questions that came into my mind, and it was actually the last question that I said, and it was, "Are you scared?" This one is very fascinating to me because, like 10 seconds after I said that, you can hear the crickets at that time, and all you can hear is crickets. Well,
especially that place.
This spirit female spirit, in this case, um, somehow managed to block the sound of the crickets out for a minute so she could come in and basically say yes. And then you heard the
Huh,
crickets again.
that's crazy.
And and when I
You
heard
nothing but
that,
crickets, and then yes.
and when I heard that, I had to go back and re-listen because I was like, why is there a female here? So then I started to think like, was this an Indian? Like, was this a captive? Like what?
Right.
Like who was this? And
Or somebody.
obviously, this, yeah, and whoever it was though was scared for their life apparently.
Yeah, that's a busy area. I mean, like I said, who knows? How do we know someone wasn't killed and dumped in a field and left there or buried there? And
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I tell people all the time, keep your mind open. Somebody might have reported seeing a bunch of, tin, soldiers looking like tin soldiers from way back when, but all of a sudden you have someone screaming on your recorder essentially after your review, or you hear a female's voice when it doesn't make sense during that time, like this particular one in Battlefield. It could be modern. I mean, it could have been somebody that, like I said, whether it was a murder situation, a death situation, or somehow something that brought them there. Keep your mind open. But that's freaking crazy that they just answered, and it's a female, which is amazing on a battlefield
I'll
at
have
that
to.
time.
Yeah, I'll have to send you that clip over there, Jeff, so you can hear it for
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So, Jeff, I just want to thank you for your time. I know you've been going through a lot and everything, but you've always been a dear friend for me, Jeff. And if I may say real quick, when you come on top, we need to get together and investigate somewhere again. God damn it!
Yeah,
It's been
heck yeah.
been almost 10 years.
Been a long time.
It
Sure
has.
has.
It has. And Jeff, if you do think of anything else that you would like to share, or if you have something that you would like to just talk about, whether it be like something paranormal ish that you feel is like good knowledge to have, kind of like as you to say it, because you just mentioned, well, you might want to look at this female response as a modern thing. Like, could it have been like a a
Hmm.
murderer victim? And honestly, now that you say that, I've never even thought of that, which is sad.
Right.
I'd never even thought of that.
Well,
I've
no,
always
because we're usually focused on the case at hand.
well,
Usually.
not just that, but when you research this, research whatever place that you're investigating, and if you
Mhm.
see something about captives or whatever, or even Indians, that's what your mindset is going to be locked
Yeah.
onto.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jeff, very very much a pleasure, and I
Thank
know
you,
you
man.
don't.
Pleasure being
Yeah,
on.
yeah, definitely. And just real quick, Jeff, I know you don't really, you're on hiatus, obviously, with your group and stuff.
Yep.
But for those listening, if people want to reach out to your group for
Yeah.
anything, where can people,
Uh,
find your group?
it's pine.org, I believe, is what it still is. Betty Miller is the director that took over for me. I trust her with my life. She's been a great investigator, and a good director. There's everyone that I've worked with there. They're very professional. Most of them had same experiences as the people that we work with. I don't know if they do things differently than when I was with them, but that's where you can go. pine.org.
Yeah, I think there's like a dash in between the I and the N. So just for those
Because
listening, I want to say there
we
is.
didn't like we didn't like the word pine because it was meant to be PINE, and actually when I named it Paranormal Investigators of New England, because we were getting a lot of cases all over the place. Like I said, this is before like groups popped up everywhere in every state.
Right.
We've been Hampshire, Mass, Connecticut, Rhode Island, here in Maine. I mean, everywhere you name it, we've been there pretty much. We're all over New England. So I've even been in New York a few times. But so that's why we called ourselves the Paranormal Investigators of New England. Originally, it was going to be PIV, P-I-V. But, I mean, obviously it's not. But so if you want to reach out to them or just check out the website, there's a lot of good information on there. We had public case informations at one point or the other. Or if you have a question about how do you get into it, how do you start, they can help you. Again, right now, like I said, I'm back in the law enforcement aspect of work, so a lot of my time is tied up. Maybe someday, like I said, I'll probably get to do some things again. Just not anytime soon.
No, you're just a busy man.
busy man. Yep.
All right,
I love talking about it though, which is great.
Yes,
so
you do.
It. I love talking about the paranormal. So
yeah,
awesome. Well, hey,
I think
thanks,
we all
Paul.
do.
I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem, Jeff. You've always been there for me, and I figured it would be time for you to share some of your stuff.
Hell yeah, I appreciate it, buddy.
No problem. And for everybody else listening, thank you so much for your time. And hopefully you learned a lot with this too with Jeff. Jeff has more stories to tell, obviously. So just remember, keep your eyes open because you just never know if an apparition will appear in front of you.